Hello, this is the Reverend Dr. David Chotka of Spirit Equipped Ministries. Now, this doesn't happen very often. So when it does, we should all pay attention. In fact, right now, across the United States, and actually in England with their harvest festivals, people are doing something that aligns with what the Bible tells us to do. They're making plans to celebrate by giving thanks. Of course, I'm a Canadian, and harvest in Canada is usually earlier in the season, so Canadians celebrate this usually in the second weekend of October. But this custom isn't Canadian at all. In fact, Canadians have borrowed it from our American friends, and it didn't even become a Canadian festival until 1957. Thanksgiving is regularly celebrated in the United States in the last weekend of November to start off what they call the holiday season, beginning with Thanksgiving, moving into Christmas, and of course the New Year's celebrations. It began as a celebration in memory of the Pilgrims' first harvest after they brought the crops in and settled in the new land. So this week, it's the regular custom for the American president to, in a great show of display, select a turkey, pardon the turkey with a special service held in the White House. And that turkey will be spared and allowed to live until it dies of old age. The pardoned turkey is freed from certain death to live a life of luxury. Now that is one of the pleasant parts of the task of governing the largest economy in the history of the world, so apparently they can afford to pardon a turkey once a year. So families will make the effort to gather to give thanks because of the tradition going back to the days of the Pilgrims from the Mayflower. This is usually accompanied by a great big feast consisting of turkey and cranberry on the side and potatoes and carrots and squash and, of all things, popcorn and pumpkin pie. Now, the most fun thing I ever heard about this is that Native Americans brought popcorn to the Pilgrims, that this was served up to the children as part of the feast. The story goes that the children would put a corn kernel next to a hot rock which was next to a fire until the kernel would pop and fly off somewhere, and that each child would burst into gales of laughter and chase that kernel in a fit. The account continues with the gathering of all that popped corn, and the children then had it served up in bowls, and they covered them with maple syrup, creating an early version of that very American treat that came to be known as Cracker Jacks. Those families then gathered round and offered thanks to God that the harvest had in fact been brought in, that they were given enough not only to live but to laugh together. Now that's a wonderful story rooted in scriptures like this one, the one that's on the wall, and everything give thanks. Or perhaps from Colossians 3:15, let the peace of Christ rule in the hearts, to which indeed you were called into one body, and be thankful. Now, the Thanksgiving part of the festival is completely true. They had almost starved, the rains came, the crops came in, and they celebrated a feast. They did gather to thank God that the harvest had come in. They did share a meal with Native Americans, one of the very first times where indigenous North Americans celebrated together with people from Europe. But all the rest of the story is completely embellished fabrication. Harmless, even helpful, but completely untrue. Number one, they didn't eat turkey. They didn't have any. Number two, they didn't have carrots because carrots didn't come on the world stage until the 19th century. They didn't have cranberries on the side. They didn't have squashes to cook and eat. They certainly didn't have potatoes or the gravy we love so much, and they didn't eat pumpkin pie. Most certainly, they didn't make Cracker Jacks. They did have corn brought to them by Native Americans, but it wasn't the kind that makes the popcorn we know about today. Popcorn as we know it was introduced to the world at a Chicago World's Fair. But they did give thanks, and it was because the harvest did come in, and they had gathered food enough to carry them through the winter with enough left over for spring planting. They were spared, and they were very thankful. So we should do as they did. It's a wonderful thing to take a pause and thank God for all the blessings that have come our way. It is pleasing to the Lord to do this. And of course, it's fun to eat popcorn too. This is the Reverend Dr. David Chotka of Spirit Equipped Ministries. Enjoy celebrating and always take a moment to give thanks.